Good afternoon and evening, everyone. My name is Adem, Arkadaş-Thibert'in. I'm human rights monitoring and advocacy expert of Etkiniz EU program. And I would like to welcome you and to this webinar. Etkiniz EU program is a relatively new and innovative EU support program for civil society organizations in Turkey. And it provides support for civil society organizations for monitoring compliance of Turkey's international obligations towards human rights, mainly the United Nations, the Council of Europe, and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. I'm not alone here, as you can see, for this webinar. We are here as a team. Our communications experts are here, Pınar and Fırat. Our interpreters are here, Işıl, Şule, and our sign language interpreter, Pelin, is also here. In Turkey, today is a special day. It's the National Sovereignty and Children's Day, commemorating the foundation of the Grand National Assembly of Turkey. Basically the establishment of a democratically elected parliament, first time in Turkey. Therefore, it's a huge day in Turkey, actually. So thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar in this very important day. The modern Turkey's founding father, Atatürk, presented this day as a dedication to national holiday, as a dedicated national holiday for children in Turkey. Therefore, it's a busy day for children's rights organizations in Turkey. We very much appreciate your participation in this webinar, being with us today. Today, we're going to talk about, actually, throughout 2021, we're going to talk a lot about reporting the state of children in Turkey to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, because Turkish authorities are going to engage in a constructive dialogue with the UN Committee, starting from the end of 2021 and early 2022, hopefully. And that civil society organizations are preparing to engage in this process by submitting their reports to the committee until the 1st of November 2021, currently the date that we know of. Today, our guest speaker is Fanny Chappuis from Child Rights Connect. This is the main civil society organization working to assist national civil society organizations and other actors in their engagement with the Committee on the Rights of the Child. Fanny is responsible for CRC reporting and program support at the Child Rights Connect. And she's going to tell us about tips and tricks for writing reports for the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. Fanny has a master's degree in development economics and international project management. And she was involved in NGOs dedicated to children's rights and peace education. And she has also been with Child Rights Connect since March 2017 as program assistant. And we're also today have Emma Grandulis. Sorry for the mispronunciation for the surname, if that's that. But Emma is going to talk about, not today, but next week on children's participation. But she's going to be here to answer any questions about today's topic, tips and tricks in writing reports to the Committee on the Rights of the Child. The floor is yours, Fanny.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for inviting Child Rights Connect to conduct this webinar today. So it is really our great pleasure to connect and to support civil society organizations in this reporting process. So I am going to share my screen with our presentation today. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we
yes.
can see.
Okay. So a quick look at our agenda today. So we'll have a brief introduction, and then I would like to take you through the CRC reporting process step by step in order to highlight the key opportunities for civil society organizations to engage. And in particular, we'll take a look at the drafting and submitting an alternative report, and also how civil society organizations can collaborate through the CRC reporting process. And through this presentation and the questions and answers that we'll have at the end of this presentation, we hope that we will be able to offer you some key information about the different steps of the CRC reporting cycle and how you can engage in order to take the most out of this CRC reporting cycle. So allow me with a brief introduction about our organization. So as highlighted by Adem, we are one of the largest international child rights network. We have around 90 member organizations from across the world. And we were founded originally in 1983 as the ad hoc group to influence the drafting of the UN Convention on the Right of the Child. And since the adoption of the convention, we became a key strategic partner of the CRC committee, of the Committee on the Right of the Child. And our mission is the realization of children's rights through the UN human rights system. And before taking a look at the cycle in details, we might ask ourselves why engaging in this CRC reporting cycle. That's an important question. So first information is that you can find inside the CRC convention, the article 45, which provides a legal basis for cooperation of civil society organization in this reporting cycle. And we believe this is a unique opportunity to bring your concerns and recommendations about children's rights in your country to the attention of the 18 international experts who are the members of the Committee on the Right of the Child. And this is also a way to initiate, hopefully, a dialogue with the government officials and to try to influence the agenda in the country through a rights-based approach. And also the CRC reporting cycle is an excellent way to increase awareness at national and international level about the child rights issues in the country, and also to empower and to reinforce civil society organizations, and including and hopefully the children themselves. It is also a strategic and very good way to monitor and to advocate for children's rights in your country by using and benefiting from this reporting cycle as a basis of your work plan. Now let's take a look at the CRC reporting cycle step by step. So the first step is the submission of the state report, and without the submission of the state report, the reporting cycle cannot start. So that's quite an important step. The state report is a public document that you can find online on the OETHR website. It covers the period from the last concluding observations, which were adopted in 2012 until 2017. And that's an integrated report, which means that it covers the CRC as well as the 2 optional protocols, because after the initial review of an optional protocol, the next periodic reports are then included in the CRC report, so that the state has to provide what is called an integrated report. So in the case of Turkey, the last concluding observations were adopted for the optional protocol in children in armed conflict in 2009, and for the optional protocol on the sale of children, the OPSC, in 2006. So now it is an integrated review. What you can do with the state report, and perhaps what you have already done, is to publicize and to disseminate this report at national level with any relevant stakeholders to make sure that everyone is aware at national level of this upcoming review. And also that anyone knows where to find the report and how to access this report. And hopefully you have already taken a careful look at the content of the state report in order to provide your comments and views on the content of the state report in your alternative report. So the alternative report is the next steps, and that's where we are currently in the timeline of Turkey. So the deadline is 1st of November, so that's the new deadline after the postponement of the original deadline. And you can see that you have a different word limit depending on the scope of your report. So depending if you'd like to submit a comprehensive report, or if you want to submit a thematic report focusing on one issue or on a few issues. And this word limit don't apply to the children's submission. There are many various stakeholders that can submit additional reports. So the stakeholders that are independent from the government, so NGOs, it can be NHRIs, it can be ombudspersons, coalitions, also international experts. And most importantly, we must say the children themselves, they can submit information to the CRC committee. Your alternative report has to cover the period since the publication of the last concluding observation until the deadline for the submission of your report. So November at the end of this year. So make sure that you will submit the most updated information by the time of your submission. And that's really an opportunity to share your main areas of concerns, the key issues and challenges that you see regarding the implementation of the Convention on the Right of the Child at national level. And you can also provide suggestions for recommendations that you would like the committee to address to the state party. I will stop here because I will share more information about alternative reports in the second part of our presentation. So 3 months after the submission of your alternative report, there is what is called the pre-session meeting and children's meeting. So that's confidential meetings between the committee members and the civil society organizations and children's rights defenders who have submitted a report. So this includes, as mentioned earlier, NGOs, ombudspersons, NHRIs, UN agencies like UNICEF, and the children. So the committee invites organizations based on the scope and based on the relevance of the alternative report submitted and received by the deadline. And that's really a key opportunity for civil society organizations to share information and concerns with the Committee on the Right of the Child. And it is important to say that all country pre-sessions are confidential in order to ensure that every participant can speak freely about the real challenges in a country and have a very transparent and open dialogue with the committee. And the confidentiality is indeed a way to prevent reprisals against those who will provide sensitive information to the committee. So the date of the pre-session will be February 2022. And it is important to raise that the committee does not have funding to support the participation of children's rights defenders to travel to Geneva to participate in person in the pre-session. So you have to find your own funding, or you can also request to participate remotely in this meeting. Another added value of the pre-session beyond meeting with the committee members is also to meet with other civil society organizations and children's rights defenders who will engage in the review cycle of your country, and perhaps you will meet with organizations that you didn't know before or you haven't collaborated with at national or international level. So that could be also an opportunity to initiate some collaboration. And Child Rights Connect support the participation of the invited participants by organizing briefings, preparatory calls, and also debriefings after the pre-session. And so the outcome document of the pre-session is what is called the list of issues, which is adopted by the committee right after the pre-session, and that's a public document which is sent to the government, but also published online on the OHCHR website, usually 2 to 3 weeks after the pre-session. And this list of issues is adopted based on all the written information received by the committee, and also based on the pre-session dialogues. And it is not a comprehensive list of all the important or relevant issues in the country, but rather a list of questions addressed to the state on a selected number of issues on which the CRC committee is asking to receive more information or clarifications or data. So therefore, if an issue is not mentioned in the list of issues, if there is something that you think is really important but is not included in the list of issues, it does not mean that the CRC committee is not going to consider this issue in the session, in the dialogue with the government, but maybe they do not need to ask further information on that issue. And the state will have to provide written replies to this list of issues. So this will be as well a public document which will be published on the OHCHR website. Usually the deadline is a couple of months before the session. So we estimate that it will be October 2022. But the exact deadline for submission of state written replies will be mentioned clearly in the list of issues. So you will know when to expect the written replies from the state. And just like the state report, we encourage you to disseminate these written replies, and also to compile your comments and views on these written replies in your additional submission, which brings me to the next steps. So children's rights defenders can submit additional information at this stage, and that's for any child rights defenders, any organizations, even the ones who did not provide an alternative report, or the ones who did not participate in the pre-session. So that's important for you to know if you get in touch with new organizations or organizations that did not have the opportunity to submit information, alternative report earlier, you can let them know that they still have this opportunity before the session to submit additional information to the committee before the session. So the deadline should be December 2022, before the session in January. And it can include comments on the list of issues, comments on the state reports, any updated information since the submission of your alternative report, any information on new developments or events, and basically any relevant information that you think that you would like the committee to know about before they have the dialogue with the states. And that's the last opportunity to submit information to the committee before the session. And there is no word limit, but please be aware that the committee will have received already a lot of information at this stage. So be as concise as possible. Really, the aim is not to repeat what was included in the alternative report or already shared during the pre-session, but rather to highlight some new developments. The next step is the country session, which is a public meeting that anyone can attend, but only as observers. So only the state representatives and the committee can speak during the country session. So there are no opportunities for civil society organizations to share an oral statement, for instance. And that's an interactive and constructive dialogue, which is based on all the information received by the committee through the previous steps or any other documentation consulted by the committee. So if you have the opportunity to be in Geneva in January 2023, you will be able to register in order to attend the session as observer. And there, if you're in Geneva, there are some informal ways to approach the committee, for instance, during the breaks, if you want to convey some key messages with the committee, or if you'd like to comment on the dialogue, there are some small informal opportunities to be in touch with the committee members. But if you cannot travel to Geneva, it is also possible to follow the dialogue, because every country pre-sessions are webcasted live. So on the UN Web TV, you will have an access to the dialogue. And that's a very great advocacy tool, we believe, because you do not need to come to Geneva. You can just follow the dialogue and really monitor this dialogue from home and make sure that everyone is aware that this dialogue is taking place, and that everyone received the link to the UN Web TV to watch the dialogue, or even to rewatch the dialogue afterwards, because the video will be available on the UN Web TV. So it's really a great opportunity to have a bit of a part of this reporting cycle home, and you can even organize some activities around this webcast. We have a very good case study on our website about an NGO in Moldova who organized some activities for children so that they could follow and monitor the dialogue. So that's an inspiring example that you can find on our website. And also during this dialogue, you might want to be active, for instance, on social media. If you want to comment live the dialogue and share your views on the dialogue. The outcome document of the session is the concluding observations, or actually the outcome documents of the reporting cycle. So what is called the concluding observations that you will try to influence throughout the reporting cycle in order to make sure that it includes the most relevant and accurate recommendations for your country. So that's a public document made available on the website of the committee soon after the session. And this point out the progress achieved and also the main areas of concerns and the recommendations of the committee on how the states can improve their compliance and the implementation of the CRC and the optional protocols. The concluding observations should be widely disseminated to those who are involved in the CRC reporting process, as well as to the broader child rights community. An idea is to, for instance, to organize a press conference around the publication of the concluding observation. And one tip would be to advocate for the state party to translate the concluding observations into national or local languages, and also to make them available in different formats, including child-friendly format, which is everyone-friendly, in order to ensure that the different stakeholders can have access really and understand and take ownership of these concluding observations. So if the state does not do that, maybe you will consider doing such translation and child-friendly version. The next step is the follow-up. it's a very important step, and the follow-up covers the period between the adoption of the concluding observations and the next reporting cycle. And during this period, the state is supposed to follow up on the recommendations made by the committee and to implement positive changes for children's rights in the country. So it is the state's duty, but children's rights defenders have an important role to play in order to encourage, to support, and also to monitor the state's actions in this direction. And there are many opportunities to engage, as we can see in the next slide. So an important message is that for both the state and civil society organizations, the publication of the concluding observations does not and should not signal the end of the reporting process, but that's a cycle that should continue, because you may know that the concluding observations are not legally binding at national level, and the committee does not have a formal follow-up procedure at the moment. So they will review the progress made by the state at the next periodic review. So this follow-up period is really key to achieving a positive change for child rights and to secure a real impact on law, policy, and practice at national and local levels. So here are a couple of activities that you can do during this period. As mentioned earlier, awareness raising around the concluding observations and dissemination of your alternative report if you think that's something that you would like to share. You can also use the concluding observation to reinforce your long-term advocacy objectives. And for instance, you might want to produce some campaigns on priority topics that you will find in the concluding observations. You might also want to develop some tools to monitor and to measure the implementation of the recommendations and to document the reporting process. So you can collect and analyze data and information. You can take up some researches on the different areas that you have identified where there is a lack of data and information, for instance. You might also want to produce your own progress report, annual progress report, for instance, based on indicators that you will have developed. And you might also want to, so depending on the context, you might also want to work with the government, if possible, in this direction. So trying to establish an open dialogue and trying to meet with the government officials and other relevant organizations in order to discuss the steps which can be taken to implement the recommendations. So for instance, it is possible to lobby the ministers to prepare an action plan or roadmap on the state's actions for the next 5 years in terms of implementing the concluding observations. And you might also consider inviting committee members for a country visit in order to meet with the government officials, the NGOs, civil society organizations, and also with the children to have a direct exchange with the committee in their own environment. But it is important to raise that the committee and the OHCHR do not have funds for such visits, so you will have to provide the funding to organize this visit. And finally, you might want to engage with other human rights treaty bodies and UN mechanisms, because the CRC is the specialized body for children's rights, but recommendations made by other treaty bodies and UN mechanisms can also be very relevant for children's rights defenders. And there are many opportunities to engage in the broader UN human rights system. So we encourage you to cross-reference of the UN recommendations to really help you to mainstream children's rights issues, to strengthen your advocacy, also to increase collaboration at national level across the broader human rights system, and more importantly, to promote children's rights as human rights. And so you can use the CRC recommendations in relation, in connections, for instance, with other treaty bodies, with the Universal Periodic Review, with the Human Rights Council, special rapporteurs, and also with regional mechanisms. So you might think that it's already quite early to speak about the follow-up already, but you see that you need already to ensure that there will be adequate human and financial resources for this follow-up period to ensure that your engagement has a sustainable and long-term impact. And we have some follow-up case studies on our website to provide good practices and examples on the recommendations that have been translated into concrete activities. Now let's take a look at the preparation of the alternative reports, because that's where we are currently in the timeline. So you can, of course, start as early as possible. You have already started, for most of you, I believe, and consider the scope of the report, the research methodology, as well as the different experts and stakeholders that you will need to involve and to consult in order to draft your report. The report should include a title page, table of content, an introduction where you will share the list of the contributors and also describe the methodology that you used for drafting your report. So for instance, you can describe if you did national consultations, if you consulted children, and also share some general information about the child rights situation in the country. And then you have to include a substantive analysis of child rights in the country. So you can share your main areas of concerns, your key issues, and also the objective and evidence-based information on the national context, on the implementation of the previous concluding observations by the committee, your views on the state report, so you can comment on the information provided and highlight some gaps in the state report, and also provide information on the legislation, policies, and programs in the country. You are also expected to provide disaggregated data and statistics and maybe some emblematic cases. And finally, you can suggest the recommendations that you would like the committee to address to the state party. And here you can use other recommendations from other UN treaty bodies, for instance, to reinforce your recommendations. And you can include a summary of your recommendations at the end of your alternative report. Regarding the structure, you have to follow the clusters of rights because the alternative reports are meant to complement the state report. So they should follow the same structure, and they have to be organized by clusters of rights rather than by articles of the convention. So here is the structure that you will have to follow, and you can find more information online. And this is really to help the committee to compare information between the state report, the civil society organizations report, and also with the UN documents like the previous concluding observations, and the list of issues will also follow the same structure. So this is just a screenshot of the table of content of the state report to show you that they also follow this structure. And in your report, as mentioned previously, that's an integrated report which covers the CRC convention and also the two optional protocols, the OPSC and the OPAC. So that's also a screenshot of the table of content of the state report to show you that they have integrated information on those two optional protocols. So you might also want to share information on these protocols. And also don't forget to add information about the third optional protocols, the optional protocol on the communication procedures, OPIC, which was ratified in 2017 by your country. So unlike the CRC or the two optional protocols, there is no reporting cycle on this OPIC. That's because that's a complaint mechanisms, and we have a dedicated OPIC mini site if you want to learn more about this mechanism. But you might still want to include information on how it is implemented and how information about this mechanism is shared at national level, for instance. So I just put here an example, a recent example of Germany, because there was a question included in the list of issues about the OPIC protocol. And then you will have to submit your report to send electronic copies only, so no need to send paper copies to the OETHR. So you will find a secure online platform for your submission, which is hosted on Children's Connect website. And you have I want here to highlight that you have the possibility to submit your report in a confidential manner. So while you will submit your report on the platform, you will see that you have a question on whether you authorize the publication of your report on the OETHR website or not. So depending on the content of your report, depending on how sensitive are the informations that you provide to the committee, you might want to select no, which means that your report will not be published on the OETHR website, but that only the CRC committee and the secretariat and also Children's Connect will have access to your report. If you want to authorize the publication of your report, feel free also to disseminate your report on your site. Don't wait for the committee to publish your report on the OETHR website. It's your work, so you are free to publish your report on your website, for instance. Here are some final tips that we collected based on the experience of other organizations. So coordination among civil society organizations, that will be our next slide. So very briefly, including children's input, or at least ordering a child-led report is very important. Planning as early as possible, that's also a very important element. And as mentioned earlier, you can submit a confidential report, or also if it's a public report, it can be used as a very useful tool for advocacy. Compiling your recommendation at the end of your report or as an annex, for instance, is very useful. And also respecting the word limit that were mentioned earlier. If you want to produce a longer version of your report, for instance, at national level, that's also possible. But for the submission to the committee, please make sure that you respect the word limit. And then the next slide is dedicated to civil society coordination, because ideally the alternative reports tackle all the children's rights comprehensively. And that's why it is important for civil society organizations to work in a collaborative way on child rights issues. So we strongly encourage you to work together, ideally as national coalition, to produce one comprehensive report. So this is very helpful for the committee to develop an overall understanding of the situation of child rights in the country. And usually that's, of course, very efficient because it prevents from repeating the same issues within a various range of reports. So yes, you might want to discuss with colleagues how you can collaborate and join forces in this reporting cycle. And there are many advantages of working together and preparing joint reports. And that applies for both the alternative report and also the additional information, but also general engagement in the CRC reporting cycle. So it allows to cover a great range of child rights issues by building on and benefiting from the various experience and the expertises of the different NGOs actors. It is also a way to increase the representativeness and the credibility of the NGOs and to show that you are speaking with one voice at national level and that you agree on what are the key issues and the key areas of concerns. It also provides an opportunity to initiate collaboration or to reinforce cooperation between the different actors at national level and to facilitate a coherent and collaborative advocacy at national level. It also allows NGOs with limited resources and capacity to engage in this process, to be involved along with other organizations, regardless of the size or of the capacity. And a good opportunity as well to trigger a debate on the situation of children's rights in the country. And finally, to promote a holistic and coordinated follow-up to the recommendations of the committee. So ideally, formalizing a sustainable network of child rights organizations through a national child rights coalition to ensure an ongoing engagement and advocacy. And also perhaps you might want to explore some other areas of work of the committee and engage further, for example, in the general comments, the day of general discussion, or also in the committee's elections, for instance. We are coming to the end of our presentation. So here is just a repetition of the timeline for your country with the upcoming deadlines and the link to the CRC calendar. As you might know, there have been some changes because of the current context. So postponement of the session and pre-session. So please consult on a regular basis the CRC reporting calendar to make sure that you receive the most updated information on the schedule and be familiar with this calendar. Some of our resources that you might already know are dedicated CRC reporting mini site and some of our publications for adults, for children, on the CRC reporting cycle and also on the optional protocols. And finally, I didn't share a lot of information regarding child participation because it deserves a full webinar next week. So I really encourage you to join the webinar next week, which will be conducted by my colleague, Emma. And time for your questions. So I give you the floor, Adem.
Ben hem daha fazla sanıyorum soru yok. Bu webinarı katıldığınız için tekrar teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Hem 23 Nisan'da bu özel günde bizi yalnız bırakmadığınız için teşekkür ederiz. Hem de ayrıca Türkiye'de Ramazan sürecindeyiz de bu aşamada da hani akşam yavaş yavaş insanların oruçlarını açmaya yaklaştıkları vakitte de bizi yine yalnız bırakmadığınız için teşekkür ederiz. Herkese iyi akşamlar ve gelecek hafta görüşmek üzere diyoruz.